Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The White House watching closely the next government funding vote happening on the Hill tonight. What happens next? Air traffic controllers are still on the job amid the government shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says air travel is still safe. The Supreme Court tosses out multiple cases on the first day of its new term. What they mean for gun rights and more. CBS News has named the founder of the Free Press as its new editor-in-chief. An expert joins us to look at the impacts of Barry Weiss, now running the news organization. The European Union wants to get involved in President Trump's peace plan for Gaza, and Germany's foreign minister says he thinks the first phase of the plan can be implemented as soon as this week.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Republican leaders in Congress once again urging Senate Democrats to approve the continuing resolution. They're calling on Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer to stop playing what they call political games.
The ball is in the court of the Senate Democrats. There's only a handful of people in the country who can solve this problem. There's 47 Democrats. We don't have enough Republican votes to fix this because it takes 60 votes in the Senate to break this impasse, to open the government. There's only 53 Republicans in the Senate. We need some Democrats to be thoughtful and responsible and do the right thing. Because why? Because real people are being hurt in all these political games.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said Schumer is rejecting the continuing resolution because the far left wing in the Democratic Party wants Schumer to show a fight against President Trump. Johnson said this is why Schumer created a distraction by picking a fight on health care. The House Speaker called on Senate Democrats to debate about health care policies with Republicans after reopening the government first. This afternoon at around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the Senate will take on another vote on the continuing resolution. The White House said federal layoffs could begin soon if negotiations go nowhere. The White House will be paying close attention to the fifth government funding vote on the Senate floor happening tonight. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier today.
Every single House Democrat except one voted against this clean and nonpartisan funding bill. Senate Republicans have subsequently tried to pass this same clean funding bill 4 separate times, and they will do so again tonight. To fully pass it to be sent to the president's desk for signature, and the president is ready to sign this bill to reopen the government as soon as it is sent to his desk.
The White House said it believes the government shutdown was an intentional act by Democrats to try and demand free health care for illegal immigrants. Leavitt said that only 5 additional Democratic senators are needed to end the shutdown. She urged voters to reach out to Democratic senators and call on them to vote for the continuing resolution. The White House also responded to questions on National Guard deployment to Chicago.
I don't think any American would disagree that Chicago needs more law enforcement reinforcements, that they need more resources. Look at this headline from over the weekend. At least 30 people shot during the weekend in Democrat-run Chicago. 5 of them were killed in one weekend. This is completely unacceptable, and the president wants to make American cities safer, and he's willing to work with anyone to do it.
Now, Leavitt criticized Democratic politicians and certain media outlets for smearing President Trump's National Guard deployment as a military takeover of American cities. She said the president simply wants to help local leaders secure their cities. Separately, the White House also announced that Trump will meet with the Canadian Prime Minister tomorrow, the Finnish president on Thursday, and hold another cabinet meeting on Thursday. Now, as the government shutdown enters its second week, air traffic controllers continue to work. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy briefed reporters today on the issues workers are facing.
They're not just now thinking about the airspace and the jobs they have to do in these towers or TRACONs or centers across the country. They're thinking about, am I going to get a paycheck? And their paychecks should come a week from tomorrow. And so now what they think about as they're controlling our airspace is, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How do I make my car payment? I have a couple kids at home. How do I put food on the table?
The ongoing government shutdown requires air traffic controllers to work without pay. The union representing more than 13,000 air traffic controllers urged them to remain on the job. Duffy told reporters that despite the shutdown, air traffic remains safe. However, he also urged Democratic lawmakers to reach a deal with Republicans to reopen the government.
We should care about Americans. We should care about American citizens, Americans' air travel. That's who we were elected to represent. And so I think the Democrats are misguided in what their priorities are.
About 50,000 TSA employees who staff airport security checkpoints are also required to keep working. Like air traffic controllers, they are not getting paid until the government reopens. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is kicking off its new 9-month term today. The justices have turned away multiple cases already. The High Court declined to hear Missouri's bid to revive a law intended to prevent enforcement of several federal gun laws in the state. The law from 2021 was backed by Republicans and declared that certain federal gun restrictions violate the Second Amendment. The Biden Justice Department challenged the law, and it was blocked in 2023. The Trump Justice Department urged the Supreme Court to decline to hear the case, although it no longer wants to fully bar its enforcement. In a separate case, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's bid to overturn her conviction in the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. Justices also tossed out other appeals by Russia's largest bank, Europe's largest software maker, as well as Live Nation. And the latest anti-ICE protests in Portland and Chicago. A federal judge in Oregon yesterday blocked a move by President Trump to deploy members of the California National Guard or any other state's National Guard to the state. NTD's Daniel Monahan has this story.
The judge's ruling follows an earlier decision in which a judge temporarily blocked President Trump from deploying Oregon's own National Guard troops to Portland.
What was unlawful yesterday is unlawful today. What was unlawful with the Oregon National Guard is unlawful with the California National Guard.
Attorney General Dan Rayfield says Oregon will not participate in what he calls an attempt to normalize military use in American cities.
All of us care about public safety, but you do that by working in partnership, and you do that by working in collaboration. And we do not use our United States military as a tool in political theater.
Federal Judge Karen J. Immergut temporarily blocked the administration from deploying National Guard troops to Portland. Immergut was appointed by Trump during his first term.
I wasn't served well by the people that pick judges, I can tell you.
A Pentagon spokesperson said roughly 200 California National Guard members from Los Angeles were being reassigned to Portland. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek said about 100 had arrived Saturday, with another 100 en route.
There's no need for military intervention in Oregon. There's no insurrection in Portland. There's no threat to national security.
California Governor Gavin Newsom opposed the deployment of his state's troops to Oregon, calling it a breathtaking abuse of law and power.
Trump is politicizing our military to police our communities. He's specifically targeting cities that lean Democratic or have leaders and residents who dare to speak out against his outrageous abuses of power.
The 300 members of California's National Guard had already been federalized in response to protests in Los Angeles against ICE agents. Portland's ICE building has been the scene of nightly protests, and Trump described Portland as a war zone rife with crimes and unrest.
Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa.
Trump also called Chicago a war zone. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said Sunday that President Trump is ordering the deployment of 400 Texas National Guard members to Illinois, Oregon, and other states amid federal immigration operations. Pritzker said no officials from the federal government called him directly to discuss or coordinate the deployment. He said it goes against the wishes of state officials. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says Pritzker is turning over his state to what she called violent illegal aliens and actively working against law enforcement in support of lawless anarchists, speaking on Fox News.
We will use President Trump's methods and his abilities to deploy a whole-of-government approach, which means the Department of War will come in and help provide that security.
Noem says what she calls the violent riots are not about free speech.
Intelligence indicates that these people are organized. They're getting more and more people on their team as far as attacking officers, and they're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them.
Meanwhile, Homeland Security released a job recruitment video encouraging people to become Homeland Defenders, investigative analysts, and immigration services assistants. Up to $50,000 signing bonuses are being offered. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Illinois filed a lawsuit today against the Trump administration over National Guard deployment in Chicago. The lawsuit argues that Washington has no legal right to interfere in Illinois' law enforcement. It says Americans shouldn't live under the threat of U.S. military occupation, especially not because the city or state has, quote, fallen out of favor with the president. The filing says the president's power to use the military inside the country is strictly limited. This is a developing story, and we'll keep you updated as more information comes out. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention will no longer recommend the COVID-19 vaccine for general use. The agency says that individuals should consider a range of factors and consult with their doctor before receiving a shot. For the last several years, the CDC recommended virtually all people aged 6 months and older receive a COVID-19 vaccine, including boosters. In May, the Public Health Agency stopped recommending COVID-19 vaccination for healthy children and pregnant women. Last month, the CDC's vaccine advisory panel said data supporting the shot's effectiveness was weak. Members also said they were concerned about side effects, including myocarditis, a form of heart inflammation. Acting CDC Director Jim O'Neill commented on the decision, saying, quote, informed consent is back. This year's Nobel Prize in Medicine goes to 3 scientists whose research revealed how the immune system keeps itself in balance. American researchers Mary Q and Fred Ramsdell, along with Japan's Shimon Sakaguchi, are being honored for breakthroughs that explained peripheral immune tolerance. That's the body's safeguard against attacking its own cells.
The Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet has today decided to award the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine jointly to Mary Branco, Fred Ramsdell, and Shimon Sakaguchi for their discoveries concerning peripheral immune tolerance.
Their work laid the foundation for new treatments targeting autoimmune disorders and certain cancers and could one day make organ transplants more successful. Sakaguchi first identified a key type of immune cell called the so-called regulatory T cell in the 1990s. Branco and Ramsdell later discovered the FOXP3 gene that helps control those cells, linking genetics to immune self-control. The trio will share nearly $1.2 million in prize money. The Nobel Committee says their discoveries reshaped modern immunology and could transform medicine for decades to come. New developments at Paramount. The media company has acquired the Free Press and installed its founder, Barry Weiss, as the editor-in-chief of CBS News. CEO David Ellison welcomed Weiss to the organization. In a press release, he wrote, I am confident her entrepreneurial drive and editorial vision will invigorate CBS News. Weiss founded the Free Press in 2021 after resigning from the New York Times in 2020. In her resignation letter, Weiss cited discrimination and a hostile work environment. The journalist also criticized the paper's editorial policies. She wrote at the time, quote, stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. In a statement today, Weiss called the new agreement a testament to the vision of Paramount's new leaders. Joining us to unpack the move is Curtis Hook, managing editor of MRC's Newsbusters. So Weiss started the Free Press 5 years ago, as you already know, after resigning as an op-ed writer for the New York Times. Can I ask you this? What is Weiss best known for, and how could her values impact CBS News?
Yeah, so once she left the New York Times after what she felt was a sustained bullying campaign against her and other Jewish staffers at the New York Times, and also the uproar that a lot of viewers may recall in the summer of 2020 when the New York Times had published an op-ed from Tom Cotton saying that the National Guard should be sent into major American cities to help quell unrest, something very familiar to what we've been dealing with in the country the last few months. And that caused such a huge uproar, and Weiss defended it, the right to publish that and hear different opinions, but the New York Times staff didn't want to hear it. So she launched a site called The Free Press, as we've alluded to here, and it was a series of, and it still is, a series of thought-provoking journalists from across the political spectrum engaging in investigative journalism, cultural reviews, movie reviews, columns talking about free speech, discourse, foreign policy, covering the real gambit. But the premise being that they are a center left to center right publication, because that is where they believe that the American public largely exists. And, Barry Weiss, I think, is such a welcome breath of fresh air to CBS, because it is such an iconic brand in the country's zeitgeist, especially for a lot of older Americans. And through years of mismanagement, ethical scandals, they've been in the dumps for quite a long time. And so Barry Weiss, I think, is the right person to bring them back to the forefront, because she believes at its most fundamental core, journalism should be about educating the public, causing the public to think, well, not telling them, necessarily what they should think or think about. And I think that just level of freedom and trust of the readership of the American public is why she's such a good pick.
Okay, Curtis, let me ask you this. CBS News has been accused of bias before. And just this summer, right, Paramount settled a lawsuit with President Trump for $16 million. And this was over a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, where two different portions of her responses were aired. What kind of reputation does CBS News have with viewers?
Well, with a lot of Americans, it's not trusted. You go back to 2004 and Dan Rather fabricating documents about George W. Bush and his time in the National Guard in the Vietnam War era. And it's gone on since then. I mean, their shows are in third place, well behind ABC and CBS, or ABC and NBC, on both the morning and evening newscast. It is cycled through co-hosts on all of those shows. Face the Nation's Margaret Brennan has become a meme on the right after her debate performance in the vice presidential debate and some interviews with Vice President J.D. Vance. The Sunday show, Sunday Morning, another one, is very highbrow liberal elitism. Same with 60 Minutes as well. It is not a news outlet that I would say is trusted by a lot of Americans. A Gallup poll came out last week about trust in the media, and it found that only 28% of Americans trust the media writ large to be able to tell the truth. And 7 in 10 said they either had no trust or not very much trust. And CBS is part of that as well. It's an arrogance and a series of self-inflicted scandals over the many decades, basically in the late 20th century and early 21st century, that has led them and landed them in this position. Not anything that we at the Media Research Center have done by just simply quoting back and studying how much time they spend on stories, or not at all. But I think Weiss definitely brings a level of sobriety to the network. And she sent an email to staff that I encourage people to check out. It's 10 points about what journalism should be. It should be required reading and something that everyone should have to agree to.
So the backdrop here, Curtis, is that the deal for Skydance Media, to buy Paramount Global closed in August. And just ahead of that, Skydance promised after the merger, it's going to do a comprehensive review of CBS. So, I mean, given that, what are your thoughts on the timing of this Weiss announcement?
Yeah, I mean, the Ellison family means business. I mean, it's really that simple. When they decided to purchase Paramount, Skydance was a media company mostly known for movies. They decided to enter into having a streaming platform, Paramount Plus, to bring its video library to, and all of the live sports that come with that, the NFL on CBS, the Masters, March Madness. Now they have a deal for UFC, so they'll likely be broadcasting the matches on the 4th of July on the South Lawn of the White House. But CBS News is obviously part of that as well, and the Ellison family understands that the trust in media is not only something that can no longer be ignored, but it's not something to lash out at Americans about. It is something that they can address and that they are concerned about addressing. I think that's a huge misnomer with a lot of business types and conservatives as well, which is that we don't want a strong, vibrant, independent media in this country. We certainly do, because what makes us different than authoritarian countries around the globe And so by doing this, the Ellison family, David Ellison, Larry Ellison, are showing that they're willing to invest in CBS News, a global, again, iconic brand, and bring someone in like Barry Weiss, who is contrarian, who I guess would be able to turn over some tables of stale, liberal, largely white and boring ideas that have not really served CBS or the American public well, and to maybe create a news organization, bring back a news organization that can represent all Americans. It seems like such a simple premise, but it is going to be an uphill battle for her.
How do you think this move could impact potentially the overall news industry?
Yeah, I think if we are able to have a major broadcast network that all Americans can trust to and turn to and feel like their views are represented and people care about them, that is a net positive for the country. Because you have to remember, ABC, CBS, NBC, you can still get via the old rabbit ears at your house. You don't have to subscribe to Xfinity or Cox to be able to pick up your local network affiliate, no matter where you are in the country. So if you have CBS being trusted by Americans again, knowing that they're going to cover a wide variety of stories and they're not going to insult your intelligence and that they're going to let the facts go where they will, where they may be, and willing to hold both parties equally to account, I think that would be such a positive thing for the country. It is an uphill battle for Barry Weiss. She has a lot of, again, entrenched longtime CBS employees who are going to be resistant to this idea, but I think she can definitely do it. And this would be a tremendous thing for America if we had a trusted network. Again, conservatives should not think this is going to suddenly become Fox News, because, you know, conservative media is their own brand, and Barry Weiss is not MAGA by any stretch, but she is just someone who is not stuck in the muck of progressive, blinded, you know, mindset where she walks around and not willing to consider other opinions.
Okay, Curtis, let me just ask you one more question. If you can point to one thing among everything that Americans look for in the news, what would it be?
Yeah, I think, can a news story answer the basic questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how? If you can't answer those things, if you leave certain facts out, you leave out a political party, if there's a political scandal afoot, you know, those kinds of things, then the story kind of falls apart. All news stories should be able to answer the most basic facts and provide proper context and perspective and balance in its sound bites and transparency on the part of reporters. Then, you know, that's a recipe for success, especially at a major news organization like this with resources and people stationed all around the globe. I think this is going to be a really positive experiment here, and Barry Weiss is the person to do this if she is given the right responsibilities to reform and maybe bring in new voices and maybe let some contract slaps of people who were on their way out, people who aren't willing to get on board, to bring in more voices. There are people at CBS, I will say, that I think would be committed to this. So this is not a tear down to the studs kind of mission for her at CBS.
Well, okay, Curtis, really a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Chicago Police Superintendent is holding a presser now. Let's take a look at that.
Agree with it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to agree with it. We do not interfere with their orders. And when they go out to carry out their orders, they will do that the way that they're trained to do it and their understanding of what it is they have to do. Another one. CPD will not arrest and cannot arrest federal agents because someone deems what they're doing is illegal or unlawful. Their rules of engagement are different from CPD and other local law enforcement agents. We need to be clear about this. If we're not clear about this, we will see another event like we saw Saturday. We cannot move like this in this city. If we want to keep the peace in this city, we need to be smart about how we do things. And attacking law enforcement under any circumstances is not safe for anyone. Because as I've said before, a member of law enforcement who cannot protect himself or herself cannot protect anyone else. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we protect ourselves and each other so that we can protect everyone else in this city. If for any reason a crime is being committed, an ICE agent, state, local, police officers, if it involves law enforcement, we are going to show up. And whatever's going on there, we're going to work to stop it, put an end to it, calm the situation down. And if we need to stay there to continue to keep the situation calm, we will do exactly that. So I want to be clear about one of the things that we're going to do now. What we're going to do, and this is my decision because I need to be firm on this. When we show up to a scene and a crowd gathers, CPD is going to step out there. We're going to make sure that we maintain that scene and we keep people calm. This is our city, and we're going to make sure that we bring some type of calm or resolution to whatever's going on at that scene. We will be there. Now, when we look at what has happened, there's some things that we can work on. Because whenever you see something for the first time and you respond to it, there's always something that you can do better. That's what we do. And that's why we're having an after action about what happened so that we can prepare if something like this happens again, or to prepare to make sure that we can avoid it. So we learned some things. Now, I'm going to allow some questions from everyone here. I'll do my best to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Again, I would like for everyone to stay on topic as to what we're talking about here right now. And when it's over, there's some things that I'm probably going to touch on if we don't get to them with the questions. So go ahead.
Okay, we'll start here. Please introduce yourself. Thank you. Madison with Black Club Chicago. Superintendent, when you said there were 27 agents affected by the chemical agents used, can you expand on that? What do you mean by these officers were affected?
Well, thanks for that question, Madison. Our officers were out there. There were chemical agents dropped. Our officers were pulled from other locations to go over there. On Saturday, we had multiple events going on, including a large protest in the downtown area. So in order to help out at this location, we pulled officers from other places. They did not have the equipment to fight off a chemical agent, and they were affected by it. Were there any major injuries? No. Our officers are resilient and tough, and they were actually pretty tough on the scene. And but we made sure that it was documented, just in case they had some after effects from it. We just want to make sure that our officers are safe. So those officers are doing good, and then thank you for the question, for asking.
Sarah Schulte with ABC7. Good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there, but I have had a conversation with the chief of patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on a scene. The chief of patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves, all right? We've been out there and we've seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them because we know that they can handle themselves. We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side. When someone is in trouble, we're going to step in. So to get a little more information about that, we'll know by tomorrow what that exact conversation was.
Superintendent, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. JC Navarrete, NBC Chicago. Going off the point here, damned if you do, damned if you don't, as you mentioned. How do you toe that line between showing up and providing backup for a fellow officer who may be in need, but not helping them and execute their orders that are, of course, from a federal level? How do you toe that line between both of those?
You know, doing the right thing, showing up on the scene, doing the right thing, preparing for the backlash, the rumors, the things that people write and say, the things that people accuse you of. Officers deal with this on a regular basis. And this is why wellness for officers is so important, because this is the type of thing that an officer has to go home and kind of decompress from, right? You show up to a job, you know you're there to make sure that people are safe. And if there are immigration officers there, they're now being accused of enforcing immigration. They now become the subject of an investigation. They don't know how that investigation is going to unfold. But on my end, it's my responsibility to explain these situations. It's my responsibility to take that off of the backs of my officers, that when they go there and do the right thing, that they can be certain that their superintendent is going to stand up for them for doing what they're supposed to do and doing the job the right way, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Hi, Superintendent. Sarah Maki, CBS.
Hi, sir.
This is, I guess, part clarification, part question. I think you mentioned you met the day before on how we're going to work this out. Was that a meeting on Friday with federal partners?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you understood what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't think I did. So I just wanted to clarify. Have you met, I think you mentioned you met the day before to talk about how we were going to work this out.
No. So I actually have contact with federal agents. And the reason that I talk to them is because when we have a situation that's volatile, that could blow up, that could turn into a full-blown riot, we have to have this communication. Because if we're going to keep the peace and we're going to keep this city as safe as we can possibly keep it, we need to have that communication. The rules of engagement for federal agents and the rules of engagement for CPD are completely different. There are things that these agents do that we don't do here in the city. So we need to make sure that we have an understanding of how we're going to go about keeping the peace at a scene when a crime has been committed, how we're going to stop violence if that's going to happen. And I had what was a very fruitful conversation that stopped Saturday from ending in a riot-like situation. And we're going to continue to do that.
Can you elaborate on what those strategies were then that prevented maybe things?
Well, I won't go into too much with that, but what I will say is this. Having a conversation about our officers going in, taking over the front line, making sure that we're standing out in front of these protesters so that they can then move to the inner perimeter and do what they needed to do to maintain that crime scene. Get that crime scene taken care of as soon as possible, get them out of there as soon as possible. That brings down the boiling point. So if we're working to make sure that we're keeping the peace, this has nothing to do with immigration. It has to do with keeping the peace in our city and keeping calm.
And you were just watching the Chicago Police Superintendent taking questions from reporters and denouncing any kind of attacks on law enforcement. We're going to take a quick break now. The European Union wants to get involved in President Trump's peace plan for Gaza, and Germany's foreign minister says he thinks the first phase of the plan can be implemented as soon as this week. Stay tuned for that after this break.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
Oh my goodness. So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from other people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
The federal government shutdown could negatively impact U.S. GDP, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said. Joining us now to discuss is Daniel Lacalle, Chief Economist at Tressis Hedge Fund, international financial analyst, and author of the book Freedom or Equality. Good afternoon, Daniel. Always great to see you. So what do you think here?
Hi,
how much could... Good afternoon. How much could a shutdown meaningfully impact GDP and economic growth?
Quite limited, to be fairly honest. Don, if you look at the latest figures of GDP growth, the GDP growth in the United States is about 3.8%. It's expected to be around 3.9% in the third quarter annualized, and that is with a reduction in government spending. So if you look at the global elements that mean the most for GDP growth, we could have a small reduction in government consumption. There will be no impact on the part that comes from defense because that is not affected by the shutdown. And maybe there is, I don't know, maybe a 0.1% at best or at worst, no? So very limited, I would say, considering the evidence of 2 quarters of negative government consumption, in which federal government spending has been reducing by 5% per quarter, and it has had no impact on economic growth. Actually, the opposite. No, sometimes what you find, as it happened in other countries, is that when you start reducing government spending that limits economic growth in many cases, then what you get is an acceleration. So I don't think that there's going to be a significant impact.
Okay, so Daniel, President Trump said that many federal workers could actually lose their jobs. They may be cutting some some people there. How does a shutdown impact that? Does it save money or does it cost money in the long run?
Well, obviously, reducing the excess of government jobs is a very important thing to do, because you have to remember that the Biden administration increased government jobs by about 50,000 a month every month. And those weren't jobs in security, police force, or firemen. Those were mostly in administrative and in government agencies. No, so when you reduce those excessive government jobs, you do two things. Number one is that you save quite a bit of money. We have seen a reduction of 97,000 government jobs in 2025, almost bringing down the number to the 2022 levels. But you also have another important factor, is that when you start saving money from bloated government spending in administrative areas or government agencies, then what you start to see is that you can have a little bit more money saved in order to get more police force, get more security, get more fire people, get more people in the parts of government that matter, in education, for example, where it's actually something that can be improved.
So Daniel, last week, right, stocks hit new records despite this shutdown, and it was led by technology, small cap, and healthcare shares. Does a shutdown affect things like business investment, confidence, and the stock market?
Usually no, because I think that most investors understand that a government shutdown, like the debt ceiling negotiations, always end with a negotiation, and that negotiation actually limits the pace of government borrowing and government debt. That's why investors are relatively confident. They see that the economic impact is going to be very limited, if any. And at the same time, they see that these negotiations may end with a significant reduction in the fat of the administration and strengthening the productive and private sector. So obviously, for technology, the government shutdown has no impact whatsoever, and certainly for healthcare, as you mentioned, very, very little as well. And I also think that there's an important factor. One of the things that has kept investors concerned about equity markets and about bond markets was the relative weakness of the US dollar, which was a direct consequence of the fears about the sustainability of government borrowing and the federal debt. If these policies that are being announced are implemented and the deficit starts to be under control and government spending continues to be under control, those things are going to be positives for the US dollar and positives, obviously, for US debt. We have thankfully seen how government bond yields, US Treasury yields, have fallen, which is a positive sign, and that obviously leads to more optimism in equity markets. But now what we need to see as well is investors understanding that the dollar is not at risk and that the government is going to curb excessive government spending and maintain the dollar as the world reserve currency.
Okay, well, let me follow up on that point you just made here. Doesn't having a shutdown in itself sort of create this this idea that perhaps the U.S. is not able to govern responsibly? Does that impact the U.S.'s credibility?
No, it doesn't. Actually, it's the opposite. I sometimes argue with my colleagues over here in Europe and in the UK that I wish there was a government shutdown in these countries, because the problem in France, for example, is that the government enters into a 5, 6, 7% deficit. Nothing happens. It continues to grow and grow and grow without any control. A lot of people say that the government shutdown or the debt ceiling negotiations are pointless because they always end up reaching a negotiation, and that they should not exist. People don't understand that these are essential measures to limit the amount of debt and the amount of spending that governments enter into. And I always say that, yes, it's true that the US federal debt is very high, but if there was no government shutdown negotiation, and if there was no debt ceiling negotiation, the level of US debt would be absolutely astronomical.
Okay, let me follow up on another point you made earlier, and you said that it doesn't really impact investors. But we didn't get the jobs report last week, right, due to this shutdown.
Yeah.
So what are investors looking at? What's the impact of that?
Well, I think that investors looked at the ADP report and saw that job creation was weak, obviously, with elevated rates. Therefore, immediately, investor reaction pointed to a faster pace of rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, which inevitably also leads to more optimism from markets. Lower cost of borrowing, lower cost of money is quite significant, a boost for equity markets. So the ADP report is something that people are looking at, independent reports. The great thing about the US economy relative to other economies, particularly in the euro area, is that apart from the official data, you have quite a bit of very reliable independent data. You don't have the official CPI, but you have Trueflation or Hedgeye's inflation measures or so many other. It's great. It is a fantastic wealth of information, independent and official information in the United States. So I don't think that investors are going to be particularly worried. I think that they would be worried if the government shutdown is extended for, let's say, 3 months, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that way.
Okay, Daniel, just one final question. You said earlier that a shutdown potentially will have limited impact on the economy. But isn't it true that consumers or federal employees, they don't get paid during this period? And if a lot of people don't get paid, they won't spend as much. And doesn't that impact the economy because it's driven by consumer spending?
Allow me to put it the other way around. Why is France in stagnation with when the level of public jobs and the level of the public sector is so enormous? No? The idea that if you cut spending in government, there's going to be a monumental impact on consumption, on investment, and on GDP is obviously quite defended and promoted by governments themselves. But if you look at the fact that, for example, in Germany or in France, there is absolutely no government shutdown, and actually government jobs are growing, and the level of employment in the public sector is enormous in the case of France in particular, and the boost in consumption does not exist. No? So at the end of the day, think about this. This is all about money. Now, this is a monetary analysis. You are increasing government debt in order to pay salaries. Those salaries, part of those will be saved, part of those will consume. What happens is that the impact on consumption is very limited relative to the negative impact of government debt increasing. So what needs to be done is to address the imbalances of the public sector in the United States and obviously bring back as many of those jobs that are needed and obviously pay them the way that they should be paid. No? Another interesting point that you may find fascinating is that in countries in which there was a very significant reduction of administrative, I'm talking about the unnecessary part of government jobs, consumption actually rose. Why? Because obviously the impact on the private sector is much lower in terms of the amount of taxes that are expected in the future.
Well, okay, Daniel, it's always interesting to hear your insight. Thank you very much for your time today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And President Trump says his Gaza peace deal is progressing quickly. Germany's foreign minister agrees with that. He says he's confident the first phase to halt the war in Gaza can be achieved this week.
Wir begrüßen, dass Israel diesem Plan zugestimmt hat.
We welcome that Israel accepted the deal. Now it's Hamas's turn. And Israel has the responsibility to make sure the transition between the various phases of the plan is successful. We need the ceasefire for Gaza as soon as possible so that hostages can be released.
Geiseln freikommen.
The first phase aims at a ceasefire as well as the release of hostages and prisoners. It also includes restraint in the military conflict and making sure supplies will be shipped to Gaza. According to the German foreign minister, those points can be achieved this week, but he adds that he thinks the next phases of the deal would need more time. And the European Union also wants to get involved in the peace process. Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, reportedly weighed in on the situation today, according to agency France Press. Kallas says the EU is seeking a role in Trump's transitional authority in Gaza. The president plans to set up a so-called Board of Peace. Kallas told reporters that the EU should be part of that board. Here's more on the ongoing peace efforts.
Speaking to reporters outside the White House Sunday, President Trump told reporters he thinks a deal is progressing quickly.
We had some very good meetings. The countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working.
In a text message to CNN's Jake Tapper Sunday, Trump warned Hamas faces destruction if it refuses to cede control of Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his government has accepted Trump's peace plan and that now the responsibility lies with Hamas.
This plan consists of two parts. The first part is releasing all the hostages. Israel makes a tactical withdrawal, stays in Gaza. And then the second part is meant to demilitarize Gaza and disarm Hamas. That will be negotiated. Of course, I can't tell you if Hamas will agree to it. I think that it's possible. I hope it'll happen, but I can't guarantee that it'll happen.
Speaking in Jerusalem Sunday, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar said a deal may be closer than ever.
I hope that we are the closest to a hostage deal since the deal in January. And I want to thank President Donald Trump for all his efforts with regard to this huge mission of bringing back our hostages back home. We are doing everything we can to bring our hostages back.
Saar said Israel is ready to begin the first phase of Trump's plan immediately, focused on releasing the remaining hostages, both dead and alive, in Gaza. Outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem and across Tel Aviv, Israelis gathered Sunday to pray for their release.
It has been more than 2 years that our brothers and sisters are captives in Gaza. When we've heard the news from President Trump on Friday evening, we were very emotional and excited about the potential upcoming release of all of our brothers and sisters from captivity in Gaza.
And solidarity spread beyond Israel's borders. In Athens, Greece, people gathered outside the Israeli embassy, waving flags and singing Israel's national anthem to mark 2 years since the Hamas attack that started the war.
Today there is an anniversary of the 2 years of the terrorist attacks in Israel of 7th of October, where I personally lost some friends, and there are still hostages in Gaza since that day. I hope with the new deal, the hostages to come back and celebrate at last peace in the Middle East.
Under Trump's proposal, Hamas would release the remaining 48 hostages, surrender power, and disarm. In return, Israel would halt its offensive and withdraw from much of Gaza, release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and allow an influx of humanitarian aid. Trump says he's pushing for results within days, warning that time is of the essence, or, quote, massive bloodshed will follow. Discussions about the first phase of the ceasefire plan are expected to wrap up by the week's end.
A search for family members sheds light on the shocking practice of forced organ harvesting in China. An award-winning documentary detailing the crime against humanity was presented in Washington, D.C. last week. NTD's Sam Wong was at the screening of state organs to hear from the film crew and the audience.
This isn't a China problem, it's a communism problem.
On Friday, DC's Rotary Satellite Club hosted a screening of the award-winning documentary State Organs. The film delves into the stories of two families in China that spent more than 2 decades searching for their missing relatives. They discovered along the way a state-backed organ harvesting scheme that targets a large percentage of the population.
There was a case about this young lady, eyes wide open, and they're actually going to remove her eye. That is insane. It's not some local guy in the back room somewhere in China. This is the highest level of government.
The main target of this human rights violation is Falun Gong, a spiritual practice based on the tenets of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Since 1999, practitioners of Falun Gong or Falun Dafa have been subjected to a nationwide persecution campaign. Along with mass incarceration and torture, China saw an explosion of organ transplants during the persecution. That's despite not having a voluntary organ donation system. In 2019, the UK's China Tribunal found that Falun Gong practitioners are likely the primary victims of forced organ harvesting.
It's estimated that about 60,000 to 90,000 transplants are done a year by the CCP. We estimate that about every 30 minutes someone is killed for their organs right now at this moment. So as we speak or as we watch the movie, 2 to 3 people were killed.
Audience members said they're shocked by the sheer brutality and scale of this human rights violation.
This whole idea of medical tourism, which has become a $1 billion or a $1 trillion industry, because it's scaring me now.
I would like to see the government not allow individuals here in the United States to be able to go to China to receive a transplant.
There is no waiting.
Earlier this year, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed the Falun Gong Protection Act, a bipartisan bill aimed at sanctioning anyone involved in China's acts of forced organ harvesting. The bill now awaits action in the Senate. If passed, it will become law once signed by the president.
After the Holocaust, during the World War II, people kept saying, never again, never again. But now it had happened again. The difference is, today, while we still have time to stop this crime against humanity, we still have an opportunity to change the course of history.
Sam Wang, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
House Minority Leader Jeffries challenges Speaker Johnson to a debate over the government shutdown, while the White House warns lawmakers that the country would be losing approximately $15 billion per week if the government does not reopen. We have that story and more after this break.
The leadership, the mayors, municipalities, why is that so important, and why does that give you the kind of effectiveness in terms of the result that you're seeking through Operation Summer Heat?
Operation Summer Heat was a 3-month surge by the FBI, our state and local partner. Everybody knows that. We see that. You can't walk around these cities anymore. People are getting shot. Kids are getting shot. Drugs are killing our youth. We need to do what the FBI is best in, crush violent crime. Summer Heat had 8,700 arrests. In 3 months, Summer Heat had 2,281 firearms seized permanently off our streets. 3 months, fentanyl, 421 kilograms. By the way, that's enough to kill over 50 million Americans. 50 million. On the low end, that's a conservative estimate. Lethal doses off that seizure. 45,000 kilograms of cocaine. We conducted operations that led us to 2,000 indictments and 1,400 convictions.
Big things are happening at Mathis Home. Come in now for 65th anniversary savings all over the store. Like this oversized sofa in an ultra soft fabric with thick premium gel cushions and 5 throw pillows. Anniversary priced at just $9.99. That's an incredible value. Just one of over 100 great sofas in stock and ready for you to enjoy tonight with fast and easy financing and free delivery. Don't miss out on 65th anniversary savings happening now at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Life's daily battles are not meant to be fought alone.
We're not powerless, so long as we don't lose sight of what's important.
Don't be afraid to seize that moment to talk to your friends.
Cloud, you okay?
Because checking in on a friend can create a safe space.
The first step on our new journey. You coming?
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Seize the awkward. It's totally worth it.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.